Hi everyone, Ian here. So I recently got access to the new Bing Chat AI tool and I wanted to see what it was like for programming in Python. Microsoft has invested heavily in OpenAI and it's recently integrated a chat-like interface into Bing, very similar to what you might be familiar with ChatGPT. You have to get in on a waitlist and in order to get access. This is the recently updated version that's been heavily restricted by Microsoft. There's been several stories of how Bing has been responding with some pretty scary and weird stuff when it's been allowed to have long conversations with lots of context. So to prevent this, Microsoft limited the conversation and it's wiped out after about 5 queries. And you have to begin a new session and then it can end the conversation at any point if it feels like it's going to veer into dangerous territory. In fact, if you want to see this in action, you can simply ask Bing if its name is Sydney and it will completely cut you off straight away. So I started out with asking it if it could outline a 2-week Python course for a new dev to learn Python. You can see I was immediately presented with that over on the right with the new chat interface. Afterwards, I asked it to expand on relevant topics to dig into things, and it actually presented a fairly thorough introduction to Python. Week 1 focused on basics such as Python data structures, and week 2 got a bit more in depth with classes and inheritance. As part of this, it mentioned a test after the first week, so I decided to use one of the predefined responses that Bing had to see what it would come up with in terms of a quiz. And what it presented was okay, but the actual formatting that it came back with was pretty ropey with code intermixed with text, so it was pretty difficult to follow. I then asked it a couple of simple questions about collections, where it presented decent responses about ordered dictionaries and how you would sort them. And here though I hit my first issue. Bing cuts off the conversation, as I said before, saying it's reached the limit, meaning that I have to start a new topic, so I lose all that context. I wanted to see if Bing would give me an opinion on the best web framework, but it simply responded with 3 that were popular: Django, Flask and CherryPy. CherryPy isn't actually one I've ever used before, so maybe I should try it out. Next, I asked for a couple of code examples using Flask. First, an API using Flask to serve JSON products from a store, and it responded with commented code explaining everything, how it worked, and I tried it out and it worked as expected, and so I asked it to go back and update that API with some further attributes like type, which it adjusted without a problem, and that worked as well. Bing also gives some context here, explaining how you can use things like curl and postman, so you can test out those examples. I also tried out a few refactoring examples, where I gave it some really bad code, where it responded mostly admirably. I gave it a very long if statement and asked it to refactor it, where it gave a mapped response. Though when I asked it for another alternative, it responded with my original long if statement. One thing I also noticed is that Bing will not always blindly assert things that are true, like with ChatGPT. In the case of asking for a code example for scraping a website, it will respond with examples saying it can't be sure if the code will work as it's never been tested. Now that's different to ChatGPT. If you just go back and see my previous video on that, you'll see that it just says this will work, try this sort of thing with ChatGPT. Now there are other problems that aren't with this new chat element of Bing, and it's basically everything else with Bing and Edge. Firstly, getting access was an absolute pain. It needs to use Edge Dev, which I don't really want to switch to as my browser of choice since all my developer tools are already in Chrome. If you try to use the chat on any other browser on a Mac, it will prompt me to use Edge to get access to that chat. You can carry on using Bing as a normal search engine, but you don't get access to that chat tab. While I was using Edge Dev, a few times it gave rendering errors, where the screen would just be straight up blank with a load of corrupted text in it. It also wouldn't allow me to copy the code in certain cases, where it scrolled over the top of the screen and it kind of wigged out with the mouse trying to copy stuff. Bing is responding with chat on top of its search. In my first search, where I generate course outlines, you can see it responded with a top result of a Python 2 course that's from Codecademy before I dig into the chat side of things. That's been deprecated for over 3 years now, so why it's a top search result in Bing, I don't know. I also checked out the same search term in Google, and it still appears in the search, but not at the top of its results. And this seems to be a result of entering a question into a search box rather than a search term into the default Bing interface. It will also kick back things like search results when you're actually in a chat interface, like video thumbnails when suggesting the conversation. It suggests some really good ones too. That's nice, but in all, it doesn't feel as well polished as a dedicated interface that's built just for conversation, like ChatGPT. The most major problem here, though, is one I've already mentioned, having to restart conversations. Having a conversation is the main point for the chatbot. Having to restart and provide context after a few queries, especially when you want to carry on with the conversation, seems like a major blocker to being in the flow of work. It's going to be frustrating if you're looking for an answer to a deep technical problem and you just want to slightly adjust your query each time. Yeah, so I don't think I'm going to be switching over to Bing anytime soon. Let me know if you tried it out in the comments on how you've got on with it, or if you're looking at using a different chat alternative. If you like this video, then give it a thumbs up or consider subscribing, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye for now.